Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties we had, but we are here, and we're still sitting with a big male lion as he gnaws on some buffalo hide. He's looking behind us, and he was contact calling earlier, so I wonder if his coalition brother, his coalition member, is on his way back. I think he went for a drink at Leopard Dam. But I was so excited, I just wanted to sit here and stare at these lions that I didn't even follow the other boy off. But yes, but I'm glad to be back. We will at some point move around because some of the vultures were heading down onto the ground, and we could hear some dinosaur noises because that's the sounds that they normally make. And I'm hoping that they're going to start scrapping over the carcass, but we'll give it a little bit of time before we do that. Now, John-Luc, I'm not sure if we did manage to stream this out, but we were chatting about how old these lions are, so I'm glad that you've asked again. So I think that these boys are between, probably closer to 6 years old, but between 5 and 6. I don't think they're particularly old, but they are older than the two younger boys that we have been seeing. When he opens his mouth, you can see that his teeth are a little bit worn. But he hasn't got a huge mane just yet either. But not all lions get big manes. I think that they're going to get a little bit bigger. So, yes, I think that they're around that age of sorts. Maybe even a little bit older. Can you hear him chewing? Now, John-Luc, goodness, you're full of questions this morning, and it's so good. So, I suppose yes, in a way. And it also has to do with genetics as to how big a lion's mane gets. So, if in your genetics, I'll give you an example. While I was up in Zambia, there's a male lion there that must be about 8 or 9 years old, and he has the mane of about a 3-year-old male lion. He obviously just didn't produce maybe enough testosterone, or perhaps it's just got to do with his genetics, and his father before that didn't have a particularly big mane either. So not all lions have monstrous manes. You can imagine lions that would live in forested areas wouldn't do them any good to have big manes. So lions in India, because yes, there are lions in India in the Gir forest, actually have manes almost quite similar to these boys here. Otherwise everything gets sort of snagged on all the vegetation. So I like that the way that, nature has sort of designed all the animals just slightly differently on different continents. But I think that their manes might get a bit bigger. You can see how it's starting to darken just on his sort of shoulder blades. And I think that that mane is going to still stretch down and eventually reach his elbows. Just having a look. There's another vehicle that has joined us in the sighting now. They're getting into position, hoping that the vultures will also come on down and start scrapping. So they want to get the best view. Right now we're very lucky we've got the nicest view of this male lion. He's just watching. You can see how relaxed they are, so they've spent lots of time around cars. Ha! John-Luc? Yes, this is the questions that I want to hear. Now, you've inquired about how old do you have to be to become a safari guide. Well, you can start your training whenever you want at home. You can start learning, you can start writing down animal behaviors. So there's no limit to that age. But if you want to become a field guide, a safari guide, you have to be a little bit older than that. But from about 18 years old, you can come and join us on one of the eco training courses. It should be very exciting. But in order to legally guide in South Africa, you do need to be 21 because you need a special kind of driver's license, and you can only obtain that when you're 21 years old. But come on, when you're 18, come and join us here at Eco Training, and we'll get you going and point you in the right direction to start your safari guide career. But like I said, make notes now. Go into your garden and learn how to identify the plants that you have growing there, or watch the ants and see what they get up to, and start learning that way and thinking, why is that animal doing that? Or what's going to happen next? So it's a lot of fun, and you can keep yourself very busy. So Carl, Tata, when I was at school subject, I'm just going to talk from personal experience because there's no set requirements that you need, subjects you need to take at school to become a safari guide. I found, though, taking geography was very handy because we have to learn the lay of the land out here. And if you know what types of minerals occur underneath the Earth's beneath the Earth's surface, then that can help you because you'll know what types of plants will grow. Then you'll know what types of herbivores, so the animals that are eating all the vegetation, which ones will occur in that area, and then you know what predators like lions and hyenas and leopards to expect in that area. So that's quite handy. Biology as well thought was very helpful, or life sciences. I know they sometimes call it life sciences in South Africa. I don't think that physical science or chemistry was very much necessary. Maybe it helps you understand the chemical compounds within plants, but I don't think you need to worry too much about that. I find geography and biology probably the two that will help you the most, because some of the things that you learn when you become a field guide, you actually end up going back and doing a bit of basic sort of geology and biology. So maybe think about those ones. And they're just really interesting subjects to take as well. They were actually my favorite while I was at school. And I was quite naughty, so those were the ones that I paid the most attention to. He's just taking a moment. Look at those piercing eyes, though. So Gert was saying he likes the racing stripe, the black stripe that goes down the middle of this lion's mane. So that's going to be a really nice way to identify this boy. He's also got quite a few scratches and scars on his face. But we must remember that scars can sometimes heal, especially if they're not too prominent. So those didn't look too bad. They looked like they're just from scrapping over food or maybe getting into a small argument. So Murray, so sometimes you'll see with other predators, so let's go with leopards, for example, they don't have big manes. So a lion's mane is thought to do many things. One of them to sort of show dominance, but the other thing is to supposedly protect all the organs around their necks, and because when lions fight, you'll see them, they obviously jump up on their hind legs and they scratch one another with their paws, but they also try and bite one another, and those big teeth would be able to sink straight into their necks, and then they would die quite quickly. So those are very good for protection. You might find like a leopard has a big dewlap, so like this enlarged piece of skin. Lions don't have those. But again, it's all just got to do with genetics. That makes a lion, and what makes a leopard makes a leopard. There's nothing even on there. He's just eating the hide of the buffalo. That can't be too tasty. But I suppose a scavenged meal, which is what they've done, is better than no meal. Even if it isn't the best parts. They should have come here a few days ago. And that must be hard work, chewing on that hide. He keeps just staring over at the carcass. It'd be nice if he did one of his little contact calls, because he's not too far away, so we would hear it so nicely. See, there you can actually see nicely how that mane is starting to turn a little bit darker. It's like he's got frosted tips, but not light color. Very much like these males already, and I hope that they stick around. So if anybody is going to be mating with the females, it is going to be these boys, and not those two younger males we've been seeing. But that's all the time we have for the kids show. That first 45 minutes of drive went rather quickly. I hope that you enjoyed it, but please keep asking questions. We will still take your questions. But for the rest of the world watching, remember to hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, or you can also, of course, comment away on the various social media platforms that we stream to. Very quiet. We haven't heard many hyenas calling. There's just a few that didn't come and destroy camp last night. But I think when these males came charging on in, those hyenas probably scattered and thought, we're going to go elsewhere. So we were just talking about how the other male has gone for a drink. I think that this boy will go for one at some point. It seems as though Steve is, however, staring at a wallow that's drying up.
Thanks, Taylor. Well, mud wallow. It looks pretty grim, doesn't it? Pretty grim. I get stuck in there. Some people pay a lot of money to cover themselves in mud. Come here, I'll do it for you for $10. Only joking, I won't charge you. You can do it for free. But the reason I'm checking this mud wallow is that this is a water source. If any animal, a cat, had to come up and drink, like these little hoof marks over here of a duiker, there's buffalo. You have a look around these little edges. It's a really good way to find animals because water's here, and our predators, they don't seem to be too concerned with muddy, murky, algae-infested water. So it's always a good place to check. We had some buffalo come down. Nice big rhino track. It's very difficult for you to see from back there. A hyena has come and drunk, but no female leopard. Okay, so these little low-lying areas in the landscape where we get the mud wallows are essentially what we find in a landscape like this that is dominated by granitic soils. Now, granitic soils is a type of magma that never came to the surface, and the entire Sabi Sands is dominated by granitic soils underneath. The rock is granite, and in some places there's basalt and gabbro. But what happens in this area is the top of the slope, rain falls, and it goes into the soil. It washes down the nutrients and the smaller particles. And the smaller particles are mud. Clay is essentially mud that has been washed down from the top of the slope, and it accumulates in these low-lying areas, which are often identified by trees over my shoulder here, like the guarri, magic guarri. So this mud forms, accumulates, and has a water holding capacity. It's why we get these little mud wallows, and the water obviously gets held in like a dam, and all the small animals, elephants aren't small, but warthogs, elephants, rhino, buffalo will roll in here, pick up the sediment, and take it away. And this gets bigger and bigger. And this could have started just as a little groove in the ground that an elephant has gone and made. So the clay particles move down, water then gets held here, and it's a wonderful place, actually, for animals to come and drink, to come and do their thing. And we find leopards around these areas quite regularly. See, that mud is completely stuck to my hand now. But it's all right. It's always nice to do a little bit of a marking. Here we go. I'm blessing myself this morning. Going to give myself some good luck to find the beautiful Tundi. But these wallows as well are so important for rhino, warthog, buffalo, elephant, for cooling down. Rhinos, actually, male rhinos, will have a number of these wallows within their territory. They are the health spa of the wilderness for the ladies. So the ladies look for these, and the male makes sure he's got a territory that's got these in, so they can come and lie down and do all of their things, you know. They don't have to pay. They just have to come and do it. It's very cool. So that is a little mud wallow that I nearly fell in. You can actually see the difference in the soil there versus the soil here. Let me show you that. That goes to show you this is the granitic soil in my right-hand side. You can see the particles are very large, but we're going to come back to us shortly. Send you quickly over to Ambia and Gala with a giraffe on the move.
Welcome back, everybody. We had a giraffe beautifully framed in the shot for us, and we were watching him because he was staring in one spot, and then all of a sudden he turned and he took off running. So I just want to see if he stops and turns again, and then we'll go and investigate what he was looking at, because it obviously made him quite concerned. Can you see him, Owen? Is he gone? Oh, okay, there we go. Sure. So he turned around and he literally started running away from us, and he hasn't stopped since. And it was a road that we had just checked. So unless we missed something, I'm not entirely sure what it was. Ah, there we go. It's very, very interesting. It's another giraffe that's trailing him. And it's literally walking in the same spot we had the other one. So he is following, And that is quite amazing, because the one that we saw was very, very, very dark in color. And this one is a little bit lighter. And they look pretty much the same size. So that darker one obviously saw this one coming and considered it a potential threat, and decided that it wasn't worth a confrontation to try and stand up and fight. He already noticed that this one coming in is the bigger one, and so he's got much more of a chance of winning in a fight if they were to fight. We always get very excited when we see these big old giraffe staring and running away from something, because it often means that they've seen a predator. And I mean, if they react like that, it could be lions, but they're probably even a little bit more nervous of a big giraffe like this because of how intense those fights are. And not so long ago on Ngala, it happened at the end of last year, 2 giraffe males got into a fight. One giraffe hit the other giraffe so badly that the giraffe buckled, and then he hit him in exactly the same spot again. And those 2 blows were big enough and strong enough to break the giraffe's femur completely in half, we think, because that giraffe just collapsed onto the ground. So now I'm sure he's just watching, making sure that that other guy has disappeared into the bushes and is at a safe enough distance. He might trail him and just keep him moving further and further away. This is an area where we do see quite a lot of female giraffe. There's lots and lots of knob thorns around here, which is a tree, especially at this time of year, giraffe are quite attracted towards. And so although males aren't really territorial, this is a good spot for them to hang around because of the potential of running into more and more females. So just remember to send in all of your comments and questions via hashtag WildEarth on Twitter or @FC on YouTube. Move a little bit more forward. I'd love to show you the other one and we can work out where it's gone to, but I think it's just literally running away from this big guy. See if we can almost get slightly ahead of him so we get to see more of his face coming towards us. I think he's going to duck into the bushes. Okay. So whilst we see what happens with these giraffe, if they decide to actually engage in a fight or not, we'll wait here for a little bit longer, but in the meantime we'll send you across to those feeding lines with Taylor.
Hi, we're just maneuvering, because the other male lion has come back. I think he's now, and he's quite boastful. He likes to chat with this one. So we're going to go back into our original. Might have a look at the jackals that are running around. Thanks for that. No, not having any of it. Okay. Well, I'm off and driving, but there's a pair of jackals here. So the other one has found hyena down. Species on the road. No, don't. Wait, no, I'm walking away. Been a little for like just a few more minutes. He was tugging on the I'm going to go and settle into the sighting. Off we go back to the Sabi Sand with Trishala and see how her morning is going.
I am hoping that I'll be able to settle into a sighting sometime soon too. But things have been very, very quiet, even on the antelope front. But that is a good thing. It must mean that there are predators around. Oh, Dika. They bound away so quickly and off it goes. There must be predators around, but that could mean that there's a predator even just on the periphery of the property, and quite far away from it, but the wind is maybe carrying it, or the breeze is maybe carrying the smell and pushing the antelope into huddles in certain areas. I've only seen a handful of impala. That's very strange. So now I'm going to move back towards the quarantine area because there were no impala on quarantine, no antelope in quarantine, which is not very usual. Sometimes the word I'm looking for might be unusual. I've had a look on the northern boundary, and I've not seen anything. I went towards Sydney's Dam area, and nothing either. Now this ground, very difficult to see tracks, because it's quite firm to the rains. But if an animal steps on either a very muddy part or a loose part where a car has driven, then that is good. Then we can see. Hello, grey go-away birds. Very fluffed up. I think they're gorgeous little birds. In fact, they're not very little, they're quite large. Davy, I'm just going to reverse a little bit so we can see a little bit more. I forgot that we have our rain roof on, because there's some nice birds here. There we go. We have some magpie shrikes up there. Hi Spencer, you'd like to know why I have my rain roof on and so much warm clothes, and isn't it the hot dry season? So firstly, our dry season is our winter season, and our wet season is in our summer. So it's very hot and wet in the December, January, February time. But now we are in winter when it's very dry and the bush will get very dry. It's also quite cold, and we've had a cold front move in, and it's also brought with it some rain. So it's been raining yesterday and it's a bit gloomy today. So we put the rain roofs on, or leave them on until the weather clears, just in case it starts to rain. Remember, we have lots and lots of equipment on the vehicle, so we don't want it to get damaged by the rain. So it's quite cold today. It's actually 12 degrees Celsius and 54 degrees Fahrenheit. I feel like it might have dropped a degree or two. But it is pretty cold, pretty chilly, especially if you're in an open vehicle driving around. We have some beautiful magpie shrikes. And the one with the lovely long tail has now moved away. Oh, you were hiding your tail. I was wondering what happened to it. There you can see there's very long tail feathers, 3 of them. Just a gorgeous bird with a lovely call as well. You would have heard it as I was speaking. Pew! That's very bad, actually. It goes pew, pew. Oh, that's a little bit better. Now, both males and females are quite similar and both have that very long tail. Females just have slightly whiter flanks. Perched nice on top, and that's where animals, or birds rather, would like to call, perched on a high platform, so that their call can be heard for quite a while. That was nice. We're sitting on top of that dead knobthorn there. But our grey Galway birds are still here, being very quiet. Have you guys seen anything? Perhaps a leopard? Anything like that? Oh, not at all? You're just busy sitting on this buffalo thorn wanting them. Yep. Okay, well, I'm going to send you over to Taylor because she's repositioned to give you guys a great view. So let's go and see.
Try to get you another view of the other male lion. He keeps chopping and changing. He's very indecisive this morning, and then he comes to his brother and he nudges heads with him, and then he goes back to the carcass again. So we're just going to stay put where we are and hope that if that big male lion that is just joined comes out again, we have a full view of him, and he should walk straight across our screens. Well, that's the plan anyways, but they're wild. Well, no vulture activity. This must be the biggest patience game that these vultures have ever played in their whole lives. I think they were all getting excited for this morning to have something to eat. Joke's on them. I'm not really sure what happened, and I don't think anybody really knows what happened in that sighting last year where the male lion came in and killed the lioness. I don't know, maybe the lionesses were putting up a bit of a fight, and then the boys said, well, we are not tolerating that kind of behavior. But typically male lions will kill lionesses. So if males come in and they have got, and they're proud, you're going to want to and what happens is when they kill the cubs, some will come back and eat, and then they kill.
Apparently there's been one or two small little issues with Taylor's audio, and I'm sure the final control and Joe Biggs is on it. But we've managed to catch up to this other giraffe who has now stopped and is looking back in the direction that other one who chased him off was coming towards, but we haven't seen him. So I think they might have locked, and they're just basically having this long distance stare off and trying to see who's going to break first. He is starting to look around more and more now. But, I mean, for the last 4 or 5 minutes, he's been fixated in one point. And like I was saying a little bit earlier, if we were to see that behavior normally, we would think, especially because the lions have been around this area for the last couple of days, that he would have seen those lions. But he's pretty concerned about that other big male. I'm sure it's a little bit, I guess, in a way like those Nyalas you saw at Pinder with Jared not so long ago, where they were doing some sort of display with one another. And the main reason they do that is to prevent the actual confrontation and the fight. And so I'm sure they're doing it in some way, just trying to gauge and to see if they were to fight, if potentially they could win it. Because if they know that they're going to lose, then there's absolutely no point in trying. But he has moved off again, so maybe the one at the back is satisfied with the distance that the other one has moved away from. Beach Bunny, you're asking if a giraffe has got a contact call. And for the most part, they're actually very, very silent. I'm just going to duck and move out the way so I don't get my head in shot. So they are very, very silent. And the only time I've ever really heard a giraffe vocalize was when it was getting attacked by lions. It was distress calling. But I haven't really heard any other contact calls from a giraffe before. They're generally very, very silent animals. I have heard a giraffe sneeze. That's pretty much the only noise that I've heard from a giraffe. And see, this is the one, like I mentioned, that one that was running away. Now, Murray, you're 10 years old and you're asking how good a giraffe's eyesight is. And Murray, very, very good. I think one of the things that gives them the advantage is the height that they have. So they can literally scan above trees that we can't see over. And just see now, and look at the size of its eye there. So a very, very big eye in comparison to the skull. And I would say giraffe have probably got some of the best eyesight in the bush, at least for these big animals around. And it's probably the eyesight or the sense that they rely on the most. Let me see if I can just get a quick little close look. Yeah, I've tried, and it's actually a very good exercise to do if you are a guide, is to try and sneak up onto a giraffe without it seeing you. It gives you an appreciation as to how good their eyesight is and how skilled you need to be to move from cover to cover without a giraffe seeing you. And that's exactly what these lions would be doing if they decided that this giraffe was a good option for them to hunt, is they'll be trying to avoid him spotting them. Oh, it's a really nice view. Hopefully he stays feeding in this spot. We'll turn the camera now, and just to look at his behavior, to see him feeding like this, he's stopped looking back towards where that other giraffe was coming from, is a very good indication that he's completely relaxed now. So every now and again he might just turn around and check to see that his suit is not following him. But it might just be a couple of bites, move on to the next tree, a couple of bites, and maybe create more and more space as the morning goes on. See, there we go. That's a quick little check. See, he's not getting followed. Also a male in very, very good condition. I would say they would probably be very similar in age. And I don't know what gave that other one the advantage, where this one wasn't really interested in confrontation at all. You might just be able to pick up the noisy cackling of some birds that are calling, and they're actually flying in the tree that the giraffe is moving around. So we can see, if you look, you might just see the movement. You'll see the tail swinging from side to side. There they are. Very noisy birds. I can only see two of them. They usually fly around in much bigger flocks, but maybe those two are just at the back end. Yeah, that one definitely was carrying some sort of insect as it flew across us. It's a bird called a green woodhoopoo. And I'll show you exactly what it looks like now. Yeah. So this is what it looks like, the green woodhoopoo. It's a very pretty bird, especially in the sunlight, because it's got this iridescent coat, and it changes color from these greens to these deep blues, sometimes even purple, and then a very, very distinctive red bill. So they usually hang around in big groups, and this is probably just their time waking up and foraging. And so they'll be flying from tree to tree looking for small little insects where they can use that really big beak to stick in and pick out little grubs, little insects, anything that's really hiding in the trees away from them. Yeah, so the giraffe has moved off. We can't see the other one. And so I think it's probably a good idea for us to continue looking for these lions. And so we're going to drive down this road and then eventually start cutting left. The last area, we decided to go and have a quick walk around where the lions were. We actually found a very, very end of a zebra tail. And so apparently you weren't quite sure what they fed on with Nikki last night, but we worked out that it was probably a small zebra, and that was pretty much the only thing that was left of the carcass. And then they started walking in a northerly direction, so in the direction that we're facing, just more to the left. So I'm going to just drive a little bit. I might every now and again look down, especially along these prominent game trails at some of the road junctions, just to see if we can find any tracks or signs of these lions. Sure. River, you've asked a pretty interesting question, asking if a bird's color differs from bush to city. My initial instinct would probably be no. I mean, from the Kruger National Park to, say, for Johannesburg is quite far. It's about 600 kilometers away. And within bird species, you get these different races that have got slightly different color variations. And so you might see a change of race from the eastern side of the country all the way down into the central part in the Highveld where Joburg is. But for the most part, I don't think you'll really see too much of a difference in color. You might find, I guess, I mean, I don't know if there has been any evidence behind it, but birds out here in the Kruger, they've got lots of natural food to eat. They've got not really any pollution, and so I'm sure potentially the feathers could look a little bit richer and slightly more colorful than in the cities, but I don't think it's very noticeable to make a call like that. What I find amazing is the change in seasons that you get with the same species of bird. And so something like a pin-tailed whiter who's black and white will go from one season black and white to completely brown. And that change is quite remarkable within a few short months. So whilst we get to that area that I'd like to check for those lions, we'll send you across to Steve, and he's also driving around looking for something this morning.
Thanks, Eric. We've found a bird. Now, I wonder if anyone can tell me what bird it is. It's a tricky one. Many people get this one wrong. They see the black body, and they think it must be a bird that it's not. And you could look at the eye. The eye is black, and the beak is not very strong. And if it turns slightly, you'll notice that the tail is not extremely forked. I know it's going to take some time, but it's a wonderful black fly catcher. Off he goes, and there's actually a fork-tailed drongo there. Beak's on the top right there. There's a difference. Can you see him on the end of the tree there to the right? Them four? On the branch sticking out in the middle there. There is a fork-tailed drongo. You'll see the tail is much more forked, and the beak is much bigger with a little hook at the end, and they're actually a bit more bulky in size. So nice to see the comparison between those two. I had a student years ago who saw a bird, and he said, it's fork-tailed drongo, and I said, why is it not an African black flycatcher? And
we haven't moved too far, and we've just found these two giraffe, and then one on the right hand side. See how much bigger it is. So, and that's what I think is the mother, and then the youngster very close by. And if you look at the tree that it's feeding on, very, very small round leaves, and you might just be able to see very, very small hooked thorns at the very edge of it. So this is one of those knob thorns that I was talking about. It's actually such a beautiful view to see how it uses that tongue to maneuver around those very sharp, pointy, hooked thorns to get as much leaves in her mouth as possible. So this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. I mean, this is an area where we often find female giraffes. And this one might not really apply to those two males that we've just been talking about because it has that youngster. But if it was by itself, there's a really good chance that it could be coming into estrus. And then there's 100% a reason to fight over for those two males. So they would size each other up a lot more, and I'm sure that the fighting would be a lot more intense if they both figured that there was a female who was ready to mate here. This youngster, though, I mean, it's pretty much half of its body. You can just see the two little horns sticking out below the neck as the mother ducks down there. It seems like it's staring in one direction, maybe at one of the males who could be coming over. But this female's very relaxed about it so far. You see how she even tucks her ears back. She pins them behind the back of her head to try and avoid those thorns just catching the tip of the ears. And it's such a nice view of her. See if you can see the length of her eyelashes. Lala, you asking if the tongue is just one muscle or many combined? As far as I know, I'll have to double check for you though. I think it is just one long muscle. With giraffe, it's very unique because it is so dextile, so it can move around as it wants, basically. So it can turn around corners, it can roll up into a little ball and scoop things. It's also very long. I think a giraffe can stick its tongue out about maybe between 10 and 15 inches out of its mouth, so close to 30 centimeters. It was able to lick its nose there. I don't know if you saw that. If we zoom out a little bit, H-Worker, you're asking about that little skull bump on the forehead. For females, I'm not sure if there is too much of a purpose, but I know with males, the older they get, the bumpier that forehead is. And if you look at an old skeleton, it's just basically a whole bunch of deposits that calcify and turn into bone, and that allows that head to be much heavier, and it becomes a much more powerful weapon, and it creates more impact as you're striking something that you're after. So for the females, I mean, basically from birth, they don't really change. That bump might get a little bit more exaggerated, but with males, it's a massively noticeable change. Sometimes you'll see 2 or 3 different bumps on that forehead. Just see the youngster there. So these giraffes seem to be happy in one spot. Looks like they're getting some decent breakfast in. So I don't think too much is going to change in the next little while. So I'd like to continue on to see if we can find those the tracks of where those lions are heading towards. So whilst we're driving into that area, we'll send you across to Steve, who's got some playful animals waiting for you.
Yes, well, we did have some playful wildebeest. Let's move up a bit so we can get them in the open. Fortunately, they went behind the bush. So I hope that made sense before we run my southern black flycatcher and my fork-tailed drongo discussion. They are very easily overlooked. The fork-tailed drongo, though, has got a red eye. It's not easily seen in real life. Not easily seen, but they're a little bit more chunky. Does that make sense? There we go. Southern black flycatcher, in my opinion, is often misidentified as a fork-tailed drongo, but they are both essentially flycatchers. The fork-tailed drongo is just a very bulky flycatcher. Their nests are very similar, and their behavior is very similar. And I believe, you can quote me on this is my own honest opinion, I believe that the southern black flycatcher resembles the fork-tailed drongo so that it can get away with a lot more than it would normally, because most birds are pretty afraid of the fork-tailed drongo because they are regarded as the honey badger of the sky. They're big, they're tough, they're strong, and they're aggressive. Just like the fiscal flycatcher, many people have heard of the fiscal flycatcher. We also get the fiscal shrike. Now, the fiscal flycatcher looks identical, almost identical to the shrike, and the shrike is also very aggressive. So I believe that flycatcher gets by pretending to be big and tough, but he's not actually. Well, anyway, to the matter at hand, we have got our little family of wildebeest. otherwise known as the brindled gnu, because of those lines on the side of the body. Looks like someone's thrown them on the grill. And they are munching. Now, we're at Treehouse Watering Hole. They've probably just had a drink before we got here, leaving hoof marks in the mud, as discussed before. And now they are feeding quite intently as they move away from the water. It's a very common practice with animals, especially the ruminants, to have a drink and then slowly feed as they move away from the water until they get to a nice shady spot with a belly full of food and they can sit down and ruminate. Bearing in mind, all they're doing now is just ripping leaves off the grass and swallowing. There's almost no chewing going on. It's like harvesting a bag of apples. You just basically collect them all in your bag as quickly as you can and then go and sit down somewhere and peel them and chop them up and make apple pie. That's essentially what a ruminant does. It works very hard quickly to collect and then goes somewhere to sit down in a comfortable, shady position and does all the work of masticating and chopping and adding saliva to the food, which then gets chopped up into much smaller particles and then increases its microbial digestion. So that's an adaptation. Let's move up again. It's an adaptation that allows these animals to go through short feeding bouts in suitable conditions. So when it's cooler, they don't have to go out and feed when the sun is blazing hot. Any of you got any horses out there? You know that the horses are out in the field all day feeding, whereas the cows sitting under the tree. There we go. Kathy, no, there's no black wildebeest, as far as I'm aware, in the entire savanna biome. And the whole Lowveld, Djuma, Kruger, is all savanna. Now, the black wildebeest, although they have got a white tail, and the blue wildebeest have got a black tail, makes it very confusing, are a grassland specialist occurring in South Africa, primarily in the grassland biome, and the Free State and those sort of places, although their range has been massively reduced due to agriculture. The black wildebeest is being bred and is in places in the grassland biome, but they are open grassland specialists. In saying that, the blue wildebeest is also an open grassland specialist, but they would have moved from the Lowveld into the Highveld as the seasons changed. There we go, a little yearling there. So it's always important to bear in mind these different strategies that animals employ. You can see that the head is moving rapidly as they're just chopping the grass. And it's also why when watering holes, we talk about the pressure exerted around the watering hole, because the animals come from whatever distance it might be to the water, and then they feed on their way back. They sometimes feed on the way there and they feed on the way back. So it's like double the effect. The pressure is within a 5-kilometer radius around a watering hole is enormous because of the effects of animals moving through. The devastation to the vegetation or the disturbance is very, very high, which leads to very decreased amount of grass and generally an increasing in vegetation. And it's thick vegetation out here. Male lions do their work, and Taylor has got a pair of those.
Can you hear the lions? No, they've stopped. Sorry, one male was doing a contact call again. But they both moved off now away from this carcass. And I'm very excited because we saw a few hyena heads pop up behind us. They must have been watching those male lions closely as they moved further away. Yes, here come the vultures. Here they come. No, don't fly away. Come back. They don't. Okay, so they've gone to where we were. Come to the main carcass. They're scrapping over a piece of hide that the male lion was chewing on. But don't worry, they're going to remember that there is an entire carcass here with a lot more flesh on it. So we shall just be patient and wait for them to charge on in. We're also waiting for the hyenas to make a move. because I don't think that they will fuss too much over the small piece of buffalo hide. You can see all the vultures flying there. Come on, the lions have gone. Anytime now. This is what we've been waiting for 4 days. This is the most patient I've been this year. I don't know why they're all flying into those trees over there. There's not any meat down that side. You might also be able to hear a train in a second. I can see the male lions. You know, chat, there they are. Can you see them in the distance? We actually might get a view of them. They're walking across this big sodex that's just off to the left of the drainage line, which we're sitting in. There we go. You're going to see him in 2 seconds. He's going to pop out into the middle of your screen. They're just sort of doing a bit of a walk around now. They might come back in, especially once they see the vultures flying around. Seems the lions have a hard time letting go of their carcasses, even when there's nothing left. Aren't these beautiful big boys, though? So I was just looking at this colouring on their teeth while they both were chewing. Their teeth are not super stained yellow. And like I said, I still think that they're maybe just coming into their 6th year. Maybe a little bit older than that. But I don't think too much more. They're still in very good nick. I think that they haven't quite reached the prime of their life. Beautiful and muscled though. You can see much, much bigger, much more athletic than those other males. But he had quite a full mane down to his belly when they stand up like that, which suggests that he's in his 6th year of life. But again, every lion is slightly different. So earlier I had some issues, so I didn't get to finish what I sort of started talking about. So while we wait for the vultures to move on into the carcass, there was a question about why would the male lions kill and eat a lioness. So I started talking about infanticide, which is where when new male lions come into an area and they find a pride and there are young cubs, they will try to kill them, because there's no point in them wasting all their energy to try and protect and raise offspring that doesn't carry their genetics. And then once they've killed those cubs, normally quite quickly, here comes a hyena, the lionesses will come into estrus fairly soon after. So that's one reason, and it sounds like that lioness that did get killed was protecting some cubs. So she obviously stood her ground a bit too much and the boys just wouldn't tolerate it. Oh, there goes the hyena with the piece of skin that the lion was chewing on. Okay, now come on round to the rest of the carcass. See, if we were still sitting in that area, I don't think that the vultures would have landed down on the ground. So I'm kind of glad we moved out, just to give them a bit of space, just to have a chance. But once they figure out that there's nothing else left on the floor, so basically we're playing the patience game right now. We can sort of see every now and then some wings and some dust being kicked up. And just looking, sort of walking through the grass looking for bits and pieces. There's a jackal now. Come on everybody, come this side. I can't believe that it's taking this long for everyone to figure out that there's nobody on the actual buffalo carcass. But we'll continue being patient. Trishal is watching a very sleepy hyena. Let's go over to her.
Sorry guys, just going to reply to Steve quickly. We're just having a look all over this area. I am at the den. Thank you, Steve. I am at the den, and he's just said that he's looking into finding a herd of buffalo that he can see close by, or at least signs of them. So Ribbon's sitting at her usual spot now. This is a new usual spot. It's just about 30-40 meters from the den. In fact, I can see the den entrance on my right, so I can see both of the potential, or at least the potential sighting, and Ribbon. And the cubs have been coming out and playing at the entrance when she's sitting on this end, which is quite nice because usually she plugs them with her bottom into the den. Ooh, let's go over to Taylor quickly.
I'm not going to say very much because I just want you to sit and enjoy this. Finally, the vultures have descended on the carcass, as well as 2 black-backed jackals. I apologize for not doing too much talking. I am just experiencing some audio issues, but I didn't want you not to see this lovely scene. This is quite special. There's going to be virtually nothing left on this carcass soon. See the jackals getting very agitated. It's really, really awesome. Look how upset the jackals are. You can see the hair raised on their back. They're not having any of it. They've been playing the patience game too. They want their cut. So they have no problem launching at the vultures when they get too close. This is really cool. Ferocious little creatures. Don't underestimate a jackal. You can also see how they look up every moment, making sure that those lions aren't going to come on in, or something bigger like a hyena. So they're still quite nervous, also fairly low ranking when it comes to carnivores. Except jackals actually eat a variety of things, not just flesh. They can also change their diet up. I'm so sorry that I cannot narrate this as I'd like to. But we will be fixing our audio issues this morning, and hopefully we'll be up and ready this afternoon, but this is just too good of a scene to not show you. Okay, we're going to give it a bash and see how it goes. So look at this, the jackal's obviously diving right into the best parts, getting in between the boss, so the horns of the buffalo and the skull. You can see they've got really long elongated faces, so that's definitely going to help them to be able to reach into those smaller bits and pull off tendons and any bits of flesh that are left there. But they've definitely been feeding. They've got fairly round bellies. It's actually funny how they're ruling the roost at this carcass, and that every time they launch at one of the vultures hop on back. Not impressed at all. This is really something that you don't get to see all the time, and this is what excites me the most about a kill, is not the big predators feeding, but the smaller interactions afterwards. So I know we've been waiting and waiting, but it really is so worth it, and I hope that you are taking a few screenshots. Maybe some of you have never seen jackals interact like this. Also, they're fairly shy creatures and timid, and every time we've come round, they've always run away from us. But now that they can feast, they're not particularly worried. You can see those are predominantly all white-backed vultures there. I can't see any. Oh, there's one Cape vulture, our endemic species of vulture, basically straight back center frame, that really big one. You can see it's got much paler eye. and much larger. They have a wingspan of over 2.6 meters. They're enormous birds. They even, like I said, make the whiteback vultures look tiny in comparison. They can weigh up to about 10 kilograms. It's a fairly large bird. Very nice to see whiteback vultures. Whiteback vultures, Cape vultures. Very special. And then I'm sure you saw earlier all the little hooded vultures just picking at the scraps around the carcass and not really wanting to get involved with the bigger birds. So here you can see how size does matter, and if you can throw your weight around, it's an advantage. And it might mean that you're going to get a meal. Or you can just be specialists at feasting on the not so favorable parts, like the hooded vultures that are eating lion feces at the moment. It's also really awesome to hear vultures vocalizing, because for the most part they're silent. Except when they mate, they sound like geese then. Kelly, perhaps the brain has been feasted on, not by the lions. They wouldn't be able to, I think, get in there. But that part of the skull might be exposed now. So something like the vultures with their long, elongated necks, and they've got fairly long bills as well, they might be able to reach in. You can see a few of them trying to get through the eye socket. That's where something like a hooded vulture has an advantage, because their heads are not as robust and can definitely reach into those little bits. Otherwise, the hyenas are going to have to come through and start crushing on the bones. They're the only ones that have got a powerful enough bite force to be able to crush through bone matter like that. I'm surprised more hyenas haven't actually come charging in on scene, because you've obviously been hearing how loud it is, and they have been lurking around. Birdie, I don't know if you saw this, but the vultures try to put up a bit of a fight against the jackal, and I mean, they will peck at one another, but in the end, I mean, if a jackal gets really upset, it's got lots of sharp teeth and could probably overpower a vulture. Not that they would want to really eat one, but you saw them just snapping, and the vultures launch themselves back. They don't want to run the risk of injuring themselves either, so they sort of move out of the way. I don't know where the jackals are now. I can't see them. They may have grown tired, and that's why the vultures are just leaping onto the top of the carcass. But you saw at one point there was so much excitement about getting just a little morsel that they were almost standing on top of the jackals too. Dizzy, I think what happened earlier this morning is that the hyenas for the last few days have just been sort of laying up in the grass. I think when those big male lions came in maybe last night or earlier this morning, I've chased most of them away. So that's why I think the hyenas haven't come on in yet. I actually don't think they're here, except, I say that, we've seen one come in and grab the hide that one of the male lions had eaten, was eating on, and I've just seen another hyena coming in now. So I reckon in the next few seconds, they're going to one at least is going to charge in. I think they're just sussing it out to make sure that there isn't anybody lying around. But you can definitely smell the carcass a fair amount. Come on, hyena. Chase those vultures off. That'll be a spectacular scene. I love this so much. I cannot tell you how overwhelmed I was the first time I ever watched vultures, hyenas and jackals all tear into a buffalo carcass. It was quite exciting. There's the hyena. Can you see it, Gert? By the big marula at the back. Here we go. Yes, hyena. This might be the same one that already came in to grab the buffalo hide. It's going back to where the lions were, and hopefully its next move will be straight in here. It'll be like a big bowling ball, hurtling straight towards... Oh no, it's got something. It's got another piece of the hide. Hard to see. Where have you gone? There it is, just through the trees, carrying something. Very happy. Sarah, I am sure that you missed the bush, and I'm sorry that you can't be on the vehicle with us, but at least you get to watch it all happening from the comfort of your own home until things sort of lighten up and we can all start traveling again. But I bet, seeing as though you are in Cape Town, it won't be too long before you can get the opportunity to come back to the bush. We're very privileged living in South Africa and having wildlife on our doorstep. Watch that Cape vulture, the really big one, how he just she just charges on them and pushes everybody out of the way. I've only seen one so far, and then the rest of them all are whitebacks. I've been seeing a lot of mating going on with the whiteback vultures too. Actually, I think when it comes to pure desperation, you might find predators or other things eating vultures, but they don't really fall under many animals as a prey sort of species. However, again, young lions, a young leopard, something like that, that's looking for a meal and that is starving, a starving predator will literally eat anything. They might then definitely try and catch and eat a vulture. But vultures, I mean, they associate with predators. They typically are around them, especially when there's a kill in sight. But they, like I said, no one really goes after vultures to sort of feed on them. But I still hear those lions contact calling in the area. I think that they're just making themselves known. Listen carefully. How awesome. I don't know if you got to hear the lions roar. Right, I'm going to send you back across to something a little bit more calm with Trishala.
Very much indeed. If all that commotion was happening around here, Ribbon would have been having the time of her life. Up and about and investigating. But instead, she's having a good rest. Now, we've seen her like this a lot, just kind of resting, lying down, and taking it easy. And I was actually a little bit concerned that maybe she wasn't moving very much and maybe she had an injury of some sort. And then yesterday, I think it was, Sutu was irritating her, and she actually was very mobile, was chasing, was up and about, and I felt really good because she looked and behaved like she was very healthy. So maybe she's just taking this time to rest and relax before her cubs are all over the place. They are all over the place now as well, but just that place is the mound, as opposed to the whole of Djuma running amok. She looks very nice and clean and fluffy. I hope that the little ones will poke their heads out soon. Well, it's pretty nice and warm inside that mound of theirs. Also want to have a look at them again really nicely, because I think it's about time we try to sex them properly, and it's just been confusing. So I really want a good look at them properly, so we can decide what we think. Anyway, let me send you over to Taylor. Some hyenas are now at the carcass.
I'm so excited. I'm so sorry, Trishala. I know you're also an avid hyena lover, but this hyena I've been trying to show you all for such a long time. I've actually told you about her. Please come back. She's an older lady, and she's got a blind left eye, and she's the only hyena I've seen at the den and allowing some cubs to suckle, one of the older sets of cubs. So I'm hoping she does come back, but she's taken a bone with her. Now the vultures are quite happy to move on her, but there are more and more hyenas collectively moving into the area, so we're going to start seeing some scrapping soon. I cannot tell you how happy I am. Like, it's made my day. I was not sad when I saw the lions at the kill. I thought it was the same three, and I thought, oh no, they're not going to get a chance to eat. But you know, it's turned out to be an incredible morning. Really, that's what I love, is that going out on safari every single day and really just not knowing what you're going to see and how the tables are going to turn. And it's showed us that today. Oh, we just missed that lady. Oh, but I'm sure Eco Training will be sharing some pictures of the sighting, so keep an eye out, and then you can see the lovely lass that I was talking about. She's possibly my favorite hyena. That one and the one we saw yesterday, who I thought would be here. The one with the slight little limp. Vulture's back at it again, though. It's really, really nice to see the Cape vulture. I'm actually so happy. So that is our only endemic species to southern Africa. They don't head out anywhere else. And unfortunately, the vultures are also some animals that we need to keep an eye out for. We know how important they are for the ecosystem. We've been talking about it, but oh goodness, they're being persecuted in so many different ways. But here comes a hyena. We charge on in off to the right. This is the hyena that we followed down the road yesterday. We actually followed it for about 20 minutes, maybe you remember, on the sunset safari. Also quite a large individual. Yay. So now I've seen two of my favorite hyenas come through here. And look at that, using that incredible bite force. So hyenas have got a bite force of over 1,000 pounds per square inch, which is pretty spectacular. And you can hear how it crunches through those bones. No, now you're not going to crunch on anything. There we go. Look at that. Barely even putting any effort into crushing those the rib bones of that buffalo. Right, off you go back across to the Sabi Sands where hyenas are filling the screens today.
I suppose eating for you is an awesome way to say what Ribbon is doing. Well, there's so much action going on with Taylor. That's just awesome. So there's been vultures, that carcass, hyenas running in. Was there a jackal? Amazing stuff. Really, really amazing stuff. I'm actually very glad that you get to see the hyenas in action as well. Here we have the softer side of them, where mum here is relaxing and her two little ones, and you get to see them bonding and playing, but they actually have a very fierce side to them. Very notable predators. So I'm glad that you get to see that with Taylor. They have so many facets to them. And I remember when I first started here and didn't really think much of hyenas, didn't really think about them at all. They were just another creature. And the more I spent time with them, the more I started to realize how incredibly complex and intelligent they are. They cooperate in all sorts of ways, but still are so openly competitive. It really is intriguing. I read recently that, as we all know, there's a hierarchy in a hyena clan, and the females are ranked above all the males, and the cubs are ranked above the males, regardless of sex when they're cubs. And I read that if a hyena or some individual in the clan actually finds a different technique to hunting, and I don't know, maybe they decide that, oh, actually, if you hang out at this particular spring in the water, or spring by a pan, like a Treehouse Dam, it does have a spring towards the western side of that dam. And one hyena figures out that you can wait there and there's a mound or something like that, then the ranking actually kind of takes a pause as all the members of the clan start to learn this new technique. And then it reasserts itself afterwards. And that's one of the reasons they can be so successful, because they are very easily adaptable. They can adapt so quickly, and they can learn off each other. I think that's really, really awesome. Of course, the hierarchy still exists, But for the period where everyone in the clan needs to learn something to increase their survival, then it takes a pause, because in a way they understand the importance of learning that new technique. And I think that's a really, really awesome comment on their intelligence. One of the strongest hypotheses as to why or how intelligence evolved is the social intelligence hypothesis, which says that the more socially complex an animal is, the more relationships they have to build and sustain, the greater their intelligence, and that kind of drives the intelligence. And we see that with humans and primates, recognizing social cues, things like, when you get embarrassed, then your face flushes. That's a visual cue to your members, your clan members, or our families in the sense of humans, to let them know that something is wrong, or that you are feeling apologetic about something. Those are subtle visual cues that we need a certain amount of intelligence to be able to pick up. And so that's why social interaction and complexity seems to drive intelligence. And there are subtleties with hyenas that you see. Occasionally you see this different kinds of expressions on their faces. I mean, a lot of the time it's the same, but you do see different expressions as well. And has definitely given me a very different view of these animals, and better yet, it has shown me that those animals that I might not even think of, that I may not even read up a lot about, whatever, even those animals have the potential to be intriguing if we only take the time to learn about them. Do you like that ribbon? Yeah, enough to flinch the ear and turn the head. Well, I'm sitting here still waiting for our cubs to come out of that little hole. But Dylan is out and about, and he is at a different kind of burrow. So let's go over and say hi.
Good morning again, everyone. It's great having you with. It's Swala Kalahari. It's Jandre and myself, Dylan. And firstly, I just want to thank those of you who joined us last night on that live chat. Trishala for hosting it. It was really, really fun, really enjoyable, and hopefully we'll be doing more of those in the near future. It is a super cold morning out here this morning. Air temperature's not too bad, but the wind has just been gusting the whole night. It's probably why they say disgusting. But yeah, we're trying to track down the group of rockstar meerkats again. No luck yet, but we're keeping our fingers crossed, holding thumbs. We're very, very close to one of the burrow systems. Our tracking team has got across to another burrow system so we're just trying to cover both of our bases there. Yes, we had such a laugh this morning. I felt like such an idiot. So we go out in the morning, Jandre charges like all the mics and the radios and stuff, and then he puts them on the console of the Landy in the morning. I get there, and because we had heavy dew last night, so I took it off because I was worried about them getting wet, so I put it on the front of the Land Rover, put my jacket on. Anyway, we get chatting, climb on, and off we go. Not realizing that the things are still lying on the front of the Land Rover. So anyway, it took us another hour to actually locate the thing, and it actually slipped off the bonnet, and it was actually wedged in the bull bar. So for all of that, so we're a little bit delayed, but with this cold wind, the meerkats aren't even close to being up yet. So we're just going to spend a bit of time. This is the burrow system over here. It doesn't, from outward appearances, it doesn't look like there's any fresh activity here. But this wind has been blowing and blowing and blowing constantly the entire evening. And it is a very, very cold wind coming out the northeast. So with these kind of conditions, and especially if you've got a female that's just had pups, they're probably more likely to come out later than earlier. So, and like I say, we've split ourselves up. One of our tracking teams is at the other burrow system. We've come down here just to kind of cover our bases. So we're going to just bite the bullet and see if we can get anything this morning. But in the meantime, head over to Taylor and see what she's got on that side for you.
Oh, bless you, hyena, or did you almost choke to death there? So one of the older hyenas, there is virtually no teeth. We'll have a look at them now. Has come charging on back. It's our friend from yesterday. Most likely also part of the Pridelands clan. Look at that. Look at the canines, how they're completely worn down. And that's also a really good way to gauge the age, but they don't use those teeth, of course, to break the bones. They are using their molars, which are very, very powerful, or very tough. And you can see crunching straight into those ribs. I mean, you look at a rib bone and you wouldn't think that that would really be able to make much of a meal. But for a hyena that has got incredibly powerful digestive enzymes, they're able to dissolve shards of bone up to about 7 centimeters or so, probably, give or take. Definitely crunching smaller pieces than that. And not even chewing them, just swallowing them whole. So there is some bone marrow in there, which is full of protein and full of fat, which is a fantastic meal. I just think that it's amazing how nature has allowed for hyenas to adapt and make use of bones that most of the other animals can't even digest. The lacerations that this animal must get in its mouth when biting down into bits of bone like that. Oh, look at that. And then feeding on a putrid carcass and not getting an infection in the mouth. It's just honestly nature at its finest. But very hesitant, very nervous around the carcass, also looking over its shoulder. I think the male lions have moved off and they're moving further east. I was hoping to catch up with them, but maybe a little bit later. I think we'll just enjoy this moment for what it is worth. I'm sure you'll all agree with me. And this is just the beginning of dry season, everyone. The Lowveld is a wonderful place, especially if you're quite fond of the predators. It's unfortunate for the prey species as they grow weaker. Oh, we've got a vulture fight now. This is where you sing everybody was kung fu fighting. Because they definitely do fight like that. The way that they walk. It's terrifying. Remember how I was saying that they're noisy flyers? You can hear that when they come in for landing. There's nothing silent about them. There you go, having a karate battle. And of course, that Cape vulture just saying, I'm bigger than all of you, move out of my way. That's incredible camera work. I was hoping to see more than just one Cape vulture, but it seems as though that's all we're going to get. So you can see how different they are. Look how much bigger they are. Look at that eye color. They remind me very much of the Rupel's vulture, which you can see up in East Africa. And there are plenty of them. But it is quite amazing that you get vulture species all over the world. I think there's only 2 places in the world you don't find them, Antarctica and Australia. Come on, hyena, come back on in. I was hoping the other hyena with the blind eye was going to come back in one more time, but it seems as though she has not come through. There must have been 12 individuals here the first time, so I'm surprised that they haven't all come on back in. Okay, actually see. Can we look at that hyena that's sort of lifting up a bit of the skin on the boss of over there? Look at that. No, now he stopped. But it was actually using his beak to, and also very powerful beaks, to tear up the flesh. There we go. Just pulling little bits off, little bits of tendon, the sinew and all that type of stuff. So they're not getting huge chunks of flesh, the vultures. Like I said, the lions really didn't leave much for them. But there, you can see, making the most of their sort of specialized feeding habits. Because there's not really much that would be able to just tear back the little bit of flesh that is covering the boss, the horns. And I'm sure that there'll be a decent amount of meat just lining it. Oh, hyenas come back, that's why they all moved off. This hyena must almost be at the end of its life. They don't really get much older than about 12 years old, so pretty much the same age as a big dog. But those teeth are completely worn down. Just snapping away again at the bones. We did also head to the hyena den yesterday. The cubs were out. As safari, Sam, hyenas typically, I'm not actually sure what the most cause of death for hyenas would be. Maybe conflict with other hyenas, if you're up in East Africa, because clan wars happen fairly often. Or maybe death by another predator, so something like a lion, I think, would definitely take the toll on the hyena population. However, natural causes, yeah, they're very tough, very hardy creatures. Snake bites, potentially. Hyenas are very curious animals. Maybe something like that. Out here, probably lions. And yeah, natural causes. I mean, that's an old animal. That's not a youthful hyena. Oh, look at the Cape vulture now balancing on a rib bone. Your weight, surely. You bounding up and down on like a trampoline for a minute. There we go. Now you can see them all tearing in there. See those bits of flesh that they're able to pull, at least from in that spot. I'm sure the hooded vultures are desperately waiting for their chance to come on in. Feeding in the eye socket now as well. You can see how those heads perfectly fit into those small crevices. There were some battaliers and tawny eagles that were around, but they don't stand a chance. They would have to be like the hooded vultures and feed on the outskirts. Just love those sounds though. They're actually not making as much noise as I thought that they would. Maybe that's just because there isn't much left on this carcass. Jumping on one another. It's very entertaining. When you watch something like this, it almost takes the gruesomeness away from the fact that there was a carcass and it was all blood and guts and all those crazy things. And it's turned it into quite a comical scene where vultures and hyenas arrive. Oh, careful, you're going to get pecked. And vultures get quite aggressive as well. You'll see them pinning one another down to the ground. We always seem to look at birds as if they're these delicate creatures that would never do any harm to one another. But if you've ever seen a bird fight, whether it's between a pair of Burchell starlings, fork-tailed drongos, or grey-crowned cranes trying to murder one another, it's quite intense. You just hear them feeding away. I really enjoy that sound. Right, I think it's time for us to try and catch up with those male lions, so we're going to go and do that. Joshana is also playing the patience game and is watching a ribbon quite carefully.
unbelievable stuff going on here. Ribbon has opened her eyes. She moved her head. Oh, and again. Crazy. Crazy, crazy stuff going on. Oh, even a leg twitch. The sun has come out, so all of us here, Davy, Ribbon, and I, are very, very happy. Hi, Kayla. You'd like to know how many litters has Ribbon had? This is Ribbon's third litter. Her first litter was Lamula and Tima. You see Tima at the den every now and then if she comes around and point her out. In fact, she is who I saw Ribbon with last night when they tucked into that drainage. And then she had another litter that unfortunately did not make it. And that was early last year. And now this is her third litter. It's really awesome that we can catch up with them and know and see Tima. We know that she was Ribbon's first, and we still get to see her around the den, and we get to follow the story of our clan, and that makes what we do particularly rewarding. And I'm sure that all of you really enjoy watching the stories that unfold between our hyenas, lions, leopards, all of that, and all the small creatures too. So please do go over to our support page. Strap should be coming up soon. You can help us out so we can continue to do this. Lottie, you'd like to know if it's true that hyenas and warthogs will share the same den. I have heard stories of that too, but I can't say. There's the den. I can't say that I've seen that. What I have seen are hyenas chasing warthogs out of the den. In fact, that very den that you're looking at right now, I've seen warthogs being chased out of there. 3 young boys being chased by Ribbon. In fact, they had actually been hanging around the den even after she started to use it. And this is a den she's used in the past as well for the litter previously. And so I have seen them chase the warthogs out of the den. But I have not seen them actually cohabit the same den. Remember, they're really, really hardy, stocky animals. And I think that a kind of face-off between a hyena and a warthog can be brutal. A large female hyena can weigh about 90 kgs. And that's a proper female. And big male warthog can be about the same weight. And they're just compact, stocky, sturdy animals. And if either of these had to come running at me, it would not be the teeth that would bother me. It would be the fact that that weight compacted in these bodies would actually break my legs if they had to run into my legs. So I think a standoff between them would be quite spectacular. I was hoping that the sun might get our cubs to awaken and reveal themselves to us, but not yet. Hi, Kiki. You'd like to know if hyenas will use the den if they don't have any cubs? No. A den is only for cubs. Adults can't actually fit into the den. It's actually quite a nice question, Kiki, because we often think of things like, oh, hyena and a den, so they must live at the den. No, the den is only there for the purpose of the cubs, just like birds don't live in nest. The nest is for the purpose of breeding and having chicks. And I think that's a really nice question, because you often don't think of it that way. It's just so strongly that we assume that that's kind of their house. But it is the purpose of giving birth to and raising young. I'm glad that she's been coming back to the den to feed the cubs quite often. I'd say at least once a day, possibly even more. She is high-ranking. Higher-ranking females tend to actually feed their cubs a little more often than lower-ranking females. And that's actually related to foraging time. She, being high-ranking, needs less time to forage, where lower-ranking females will actually have to forage for longer distances, tens of Ks, away from the den, and will actually only come back every few days to feed their young, even as much as 9 days, as one researcher found. But they compensate for that by having higher concentrations of fat and protein. So hyena milk has very high quantities of fat and protein, but those that are lower ranked and who feed their cubs less frequently actually increase that fat and protein, particularly fat, which is how they compensate for the fact that they have to forage for longer distances. Well, the sun is now slipping away yet again, and I think that our cubs are going to be nice and tucked away warm in their burrow. But I'm going to send you over to Dylan and see if he's had any luck where he is at his burrows.
Yeah, so it's still very, very quiet here. The trackers also haven't managed to pick up anything. I think we may just be missing tracks on the soft sand with this wind that's been blowing. I was just picking up some snippets there. There was an interesting question that came through about animals dying of old age and what percentage that is. It's a difficult one to answer, for any guy to answer it. One of the challenges is, why I say it's a difficult one to answer, is if you've got a population of animals and there's no predators, okay, well then you're going to automatically assume, well, most of the animals that would be dying there would be dying of old age, or possibly disease that gets into a population like that, which can be indiscriminate. But in a natural system where you've got like these reserves, where you've got a whole suite of large predators, you'll probably find it's a minority of animals that actually die of old age. And I must actually do some homework there and see if there's actually any actual studies that have been done on that. It would be a very, very interesting question to answer, and also a very challenging one, because even in a natural system, your predators aren't going across the board for the same things. So you'd have to say, well, a study that gets done on large herbivores and says, well, 20% of herbivores die of old age, or 10% or 5%, or whatever it is. Well, how does that translate into birds? Are birds dying of old age, or are they just getting gobbled by predators? What about reptiles? Can you use the data that's acquired from doing a study on herbivores, ungulates, into the reptile world? So, well, 20% of cobras die of old age. Do they? We don't know. There's a lot of that's a very it's a very interesting but a very open-ended question. But anyway, I'll actually look into it. I'll see if there's any data available on that. So anyway, so there's still no action on these meerkat burrows over here. But there's been a huge amount of wind, and just to give you an idea, look at that. So it could just be that the tracks that we're seeing have just been blown, or that we're not seeing, they've just been blown away. And remember, the meerkats would have gone down late yesterday afternoon, probably with these kind of temperatures, probably 4 o'clock, maybe even earlier, between 3 and 4. So now they've been sitting for 15 hours with these mounds of sand just getting constantly blown over by this wind. So maybe we're just not seeing the tracks because of that. But the only way we're going to know is just to wait it out and see what happens over here. So we'll bite the bullet. There are some springbuck feeding way down there in the distance. They're kind of like keeping a beady eye on us. See why you got them, Chandra? One lying down, feeding. A couple are actually trying to stand out of the wind behind those bushes. So a lot of animals will shelter, excuse me, in conditions that are very, very windy, because that drops their core temperature, or their body temperature can drop the core temperature, which means they'll be losing a lot of energy. Normally with these bigger ones, it's just more of a comfort thing, you know, they don't like being in wind. Whereas with these small animals like meerkats, this wind can really impact on their energy requirements, and you know, through dropping the body temperature. And so that's why, you know, you can sit, if it's really freezing cold, and today is cold, but it's not freezing cold. But on a very, very bad day out here, these meerkats won't even come out at all. So it'll be interesting just to, I'm losing my mic there. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We're going to head over to Steve, or you're going to head over to Steve, and we're going to wait it out on this side, so see what happens.
Sorry, I'm not getting all those comms, but I believe you're with us again. Hello, everybody. We have popped onto Simbambili just to have a little look, check in the watching points. Here is a lovely little Simbambili watering hole. See if I can frame it up for you there, BK. Tell me when you're good. You're good like that. We were here yesterday. It's a great place for a coffee. Here's our resident hippo, just on the right. He's very cold. So he's keeping his head underwater. You can imagine if you're wet with this breeze, cold breeze blowing, how it must cool you down. It's probably warmer in the water than it is out. Just going to keep quiet for a moment, and maybe you can hear all of these little bird calls around us. It's a bit windy. I'm not sure if you could hear the beginnings of the chin spot batters. It's not finishing the call, just the 2 note out of the 3. Big skinny over there. We've got a fork-tailed drongo on the floor with a yellow-billed hornbill. You can see just at 10:30 on the ground over there. To the right a bit. Watch here on the screen. Just over there. Yeah. There we go. Just a bit more left. There's the fork-tailed drongo on the ground. You don't often see fork-tailed drongos on the ground like that. And there's the yellow-billed hornbill. He's just come in and bombed the place. And look what they're picking up. Very likely harvested termites are out and about with the sun being away. That hornbill has decided, I'm going to claim this patch from the fork-tailed drongos. So they were busy going and picking up things like peanuts off the floor. And it's very likely that there's either termite alates that have come out, I haven't seen any, or types of termites on the ground, maybe fungus growers, or even ants could be out and about, being quite busy. There we go. You can see them there. Talk about the fork-tailed drongo being the tough one. The yellow-billed hornbill has got it all here. Let's see if we can get what he's popping in his mouth there. Typical feed strategy for ants or termites. Come out in accumulations. Good adaptation. Many of these birds to be able to survive here. That's where you often find little feeding parties or bird parties. The best place to do some birding is at a birding party. Aren't they funny when they run along the ground? Okay, well, it sounds like Taylor's cats are making some noises. Let's quickly send you back over to her.
Well, we don't have any birds, but we've managed to catch up to one of the big male lions who's just, for the moment, lying around. But I don't think that that's going to be for too long, which is why we've actually taken a bit of a further view of this cat. We've actually stuck up on the road because he's been up and down and contact calling. So I think it's only going to be a matter of minutes before he does get up and walk around again. And hopefully he'll walk straight in our direction and we can have a nice view of him. I don't know where the other one has gone. Just sit quietly every now and then just to listen if we can hear a response. But so far nothing. Now, Rowan, who's just 6 years old, lions are very strong animals. I mean, you've seen them this morning, especially these males been walking around. They've got all that power in their shoulders. And the difference in strength between male and female is largely to do with how much they weigh. So when you watch lions taking down big animals like, say, a buffalo, like which the lions have, it's difficult for them. And often when they're running at great speed and then launching themselves at an animal, that actually helps by knocking the whatever prey species they're hunting off of their feet. And once that animal is down on the ground, it's very difficult for the prey to overpower the lions. That's where the lions have their real strength. So lionesses, obviously very good. They hunt together. They coordinate their hunts. But sometimes, as we've seen the boys do, they will go out and hunt, especially if they're on their own. But they each have a very unique role to sort of play. So the males will come in and definitely help bring that animal down to the ground. Sometimes you'll see lionesses struggling to do that. And you might find two at the back of a buffalo biting on the ankles and one jumping up on top and one trying to pull it down by the throat. But as that big male comes in, and he's just able to pull them down. So a big male lion can weigh up to about 280 kilograms, but that's an exceptional male. And a female's roughly around 150 kilograms. So that both of them are enormous cats. But if a male lion has got an extra 130 kilograms of weight on his side, and it's probably muscle, you can imagine he's much, much more powerful than the lioness. But they all work as a team. And when they work as a team, they are formidable creatures and unstoppable. And then they'll take down animals as big as giraffe and occasionally even young elephants. But we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to sit and watch and wait for this lion to make his next move. Let's go to Erica Ngalo, who's watching something the lion might like to eat.
We certainly are on dam watch. We have just arrived at this waterhole, the waterhole that's within the eastern part of the reserve that I'm sure everyone knows quite well. And at the very, very far edge, we've seen these two beautiful black and white birds that are just on the right-hand side of the frame over there. And those are called saddle-billed storks, a couple of birds that we don't see too often. They're quite a rare species to find. So to see two of them together is really cool. And I mean, it is very far away, but they both look like they are adults. They've both got that nice black and white color. And then if you look at the bill, you might just be able to see the different colors, the white, the red, the black and the red barring with that yellow that stands out quite distinctively. So definitely 2 adults. I would assume that this is a pair, a monogamous pair of storks. It looks like they're right at the edge of the water. You can see that one's got its head down. It looks like it's almost fishing, so it's just opening up its bill and trying to feel for anything that might swim in between it. We did have those saddleboard storks were almost exactly where a couple of waterbucks came down to drink, but as the saddleboard storks were coming down, the waterbuck decided to move slightly further off into the bushes, so we don't have view of them anymore. I think, just to continue on with that conversation we were having a little bit earlier. What's that one doing? The stork had its wings open. I thought it might be going after a fish. But I think most of these animals, especially waterbuck, they don't really get to the point where they get to old age. I think especially their behavior, they love to hang around water. And at this time of year, that's where predators hang around too. And so if they're starting to look a little bit frail or a bit fragile, definitely predators will take advantage of them, especially a big pride of lions. And one of the reasons why we decided to come towards this big waterhole is because we haven't seen tracks of the pride of lions moving too far away from here. We did a big loop around. There's no tracks on the roads that are on either side of this waterhole, so they're still somewhere in here, we think. And they might have just been continuing moving in the early hours of the morning, or they've rested in some long grass. Chris, you asked quite a deep question about how climate change has affected the lifespan of African wildlife. And I think so. I think one of the biggest threats in terms of climate change is the changing of seasons and the drier months becoming drier for longer. And a lot of animals that are very water dependent they're reliant on water, and if there's no water, then their lifespan is just going to get small until eventually they die because they can't handle themselves in dry conditions. So I do think it is probably something that's affecting them. I wouldn't say it's shortened their lifespan physiologically, but the external factors have probably reduced a lot of animals' lifespans around here. Luckily, I mean, we've just come out of our dry cycle within the eastern and northeastern part of the country. And so a lot of these animals that were dying because of the drought conditions are surviving through this winter, which is really nice. We've got these things like waterbuck are very water dependent. Buffaloes is probably the biggest one that comes to mind. They're doing really, really well this season. And it's because we've got such a large water source available for them. Not only water, I guess, but also food. It's probably more important that they've got good grazing within this area so they can keep the nutrients coming on a day-to-day basis. I don't think I've been working in the industry and working in one place long enough to see the effects of climate change, but I'm sure over the last 20, 30 years or so there has been a considerable change. Still looking at those stalks, they're not really moving around too much yet. So there's not too much going on around our waterhole. What we will do is just send you across to a different waterhole in a slightly different area and see if Trish has found something interesting for us.
Unfortunately not. Also very calm, but there are some elephants in the block just to the north of this, so I'm hoping that they will come out and maybe come have a drink. So I'm going to sit tight for a little bit. That's the block right there. Now, you've been having some interesting conversation about how climate change would affect the lifespan of certain animals. And as Eric said, it's very difficult to see that because climate change is something that happens over a long geological time period. It's something that's quite natural. It's the rate at which it's happening that is problematic. Now, lifespan is actually determined by genetics and the molecular goings on of a body of an animal, and has a lot to do with the telomeres on their chromosomes and how they age, whether they are under a lot of stress, etc. That can reduce how long their telomeres are, and that's what affects lifespan. But what climate change can really affect is death rate, and then slowly lifespan can change as it gets adjusts to the fact that there's less nutrients and things like that. But the actual death rate of animals can go up or down. So we are used to those animals whose death rate might go up, because their foraging behaviors will have to change. One example I can think of specifically with climate change are wild dogs, because they tire out so quickly, and they don't like the heat. The heat is very, very difficult for them to hunt in, and they can overheat very quickly. And because of that, and the fact that it is hotter for longer. There's some screaming going on there from some francolins and squirrel. We're going to keep an eye there. Hotter for longer, which means that those prolonged excesses of hunting that they go through are actually cut short because it's too hot, and that's a direct effect of climate change, and that can affect how much they eat and therefore their survival rate. Anyway, I'm going to wait here for these elephants to come down, and I'm going to send you back over to Eric and see what's going on his side.
We were still just watching those saddleboard stalks, and all of a sudden we saw this wildebeest running down towards the water, and it was followed by the rest of the herd, and they've all come down to the water and are drinking at the same time. And I think all of them, barring one or two, have actually walked at least 1 or 2 meters into the water to have something to drink. And I'm sure that's just to try and get away from the debris that's blowing up against the edge of the water. So to try and get as much clean water as they possibly can. And they're all spread out. They're about a body length apart. It's probably a herd of about 20 or 30 of them. And it's just such a nice way to see those saddleboard stalks, and just to see how tall they are, because from the tip of their toes to the top of their head, they're pretty much exactly the same length as the height of a wildebeest shoulder. So they are very, very tall birds. It's a really nice comparison, because I'm sure lots of people know what a wildebeest looks like and the size of it. I don't know how many people understand how tall these saddleboard stalks really are. So we've got a life-size comparison going on here, which is very, very cool. It's now about 2.5, 3 hours after sunrise, and these wildebeest have, even though it's not particularly hot, I guess they've decided that it's long enough period from dawn that if predators were active early in the morning, they're probably lying flat now, and so they're probably feeling quite comfortable coming down towards the waterhole to drink, but I doubt they'll spend too much time. The River's asking what the coloration is for on the saddleboard stalk's beak. And I'm actually not entirely sure. I'll see if I can see on my app or my bird book if they give an explanation. But it is very unique because there's 2 distinct colors and 3 very, very distinct strips. And a lot of the time, if birds are very colorful to try and attract mates, but you can see, I mean, male and female look almost identical, barring 1 or 2 differences. and which means that they are monogamous, and so they keep a lifelong bond for as long as they can, basically. Whereas, say, a red bishop, if you know what a red bishop is, it's a bright red bird, and they try and attract mates because of their beautiful coloration. Yeah, so I'll see if I can read up a little bit more about the saddleboard storks. These wildebeest seem like they are gathering, and they probably will move together in one big herd, and so we're very lucky to catch them in that brief period where they decided to drink, and it seems like they're going to be moving off. So we might too. And whilst we're driving around looking for something else, we'll send you across to Steve. He's got some zebra also at a small little waterhole.
We are at a mud wallow, and this lovely herd of zebra is now leaving. Off they go. Finally got animals drinking at One-Eyed Pan on Simbambili. Small little family unit of one stallion, there he is, and at least one adult mare and 2 sub-adults. And he watched, he didn't drink. He stood guard while the 3 of them had a drink, which was quite special. Quite something to see, and they're going back on to Juma, which is wonderful. Let's go catch up with them, shall we? Love zebras. I really do. Taylor loves them too, as I'm sure she's been mentioned. Forget you can still answer questions, everybody, using the hashtag WildEarth, or throw them in on the YouTube chat stream or Twitch if it's your preferred platform. They are trotting away. Sorry, zebras, I just want to get one more view of you. There they go. A nice image of a small family unit of zebra. And as they exit stage left, we're going to send you over to the west with Dylan and some creepy crawlies.
These little armoured ground crickets, Chandra and I have a real soft spot for them. This cold weather is really taking their toll. Their numbers are dropping off rapidly. This little guy that we picked up is freezing cold. I can even feel his body against my skin, that how cold it is. So he's just going to try get any bit of warmth that he can now. But they're really coming to the end of their season now. But they are gorgeous little things, and you can see they're not venomous. There's no danger there. He's not trying to bite me. Shame, man. Yeah, you can feel for these little things, though. What's this one's name, Jandre? Dylan. How amazing that is, eh? So there's, just in terms of picking things up, there's things that you shouldn't pick up in the outdoors, and generally, if you don't know what something is, don't pick it up. That's like a golden rule across the board. But I'm going to put him down, and I've got something else really interesting to show you. There you go, little man. Off you go. Go speak to Jandre. So while I was walking around here, we were waiting for these meerkats. Okay, but while I was walking around, you get lots of these bushes called. It's a Kalahari currant. Very common all over. Lovely furry leaves, and they've got this crenellated margin, okay? But they furry top and bottom. Here's a slight variation on that, a slightly different color version. He's gone. But the same design, okay? But then I'm walking around and I come across this one that's also the same thing. So all of these ones have got. What distinguishes these plants is the leaflets are all divided into 3. Let me try hold it there so you can see it easily. It's a bit bit difficult, but I'll get it. Sorry, Jeandre, I know you... See, the leaflets divide into 3. That might not be a good example there. But what's fascinating about this one is completely hairless, okay? And the petioles, which is this section, let me get a demo stick here. It's this section from the main stalk from there to where the leaf starts. That little piece there is way, way, way longer on this plant than on the others. On these ones, that petiole, let me try and give you, from there to there is very, very short, or relatively short. And these ones are all very furry. These ones have got no hair on them. So I think, oh, and the leaf margins. These leaf margins are what we call entire. In other words, it's a smooth leaf margin, whereas these ones are crenellated. They've got these little ridges on the leaf margin. So long petiole, smooth leaves, smooth leaf margin, short petioles, very furry leaves, and a crenellated leaf margin. I think this may be a new species for swallow, but I would have to go and do quite a bit of homework, chat to people, send specimens, and but yeah, this is just an and again, there, you know, it just shows you're waiting for something like this, like meerkats that have given us a no-show. And you never know what you're going to come up with. That's quite fun, and I like plants. You know, I'm not great with them. You know, I've still got a long way to go, but just show, keep your eye open. You never know what you're going to find. Telio has asked a brilliant question there, and I love those kind of questions. Telio's asked is, if someone picks an insect up, you know, we always think of, oh, what harm can the insect do to you? But Telio's asked a great question, is, can you poison an insect if you pick it up? The short answer is no. However, I don't use like weird hand creams. In fact, I don't use any hand creams. Sort of a bit like dinosaur claws here. Yeah, I would not recommend it to, and I don't like it if people handle things. I don't care what it is. If you're using sun cream, any kind of hand cream, that kind of stuff, because you get chemicals in them that they can't be good for nature and for wildlife. You know, there are probably very few products out there. I'm not giving any kind of marketing spiel. I'm just telling it as it is. There's probably very few products out there that are completely harmless to the environment. And remember, a lot of these things, I mean, if you're handling frogs, a lot of these, as one example, a lot of these things can actually absorb toxins through their skin. And it's what we call indicator species. So the last thing you want to be doing is going in the morning, putting some lovely sun cream and hand cream and weird things on, and then you go out, you're running and you're handling frogs and little insects and chameleons and snakes and whatever you're going to be picking up. You've got to be really careful about that kind of stuff. I don't know how accurately that's ever been measured in terms of impact, but that's my own personal take on it. You know, I'm not saying, you know, either way, but that's my own personal take is, so that's a beautiful question, very, very good question to have asked there, and thanks for that. You know, that's just it's nice to see that people are aware of those kind of things. So anyway, there we go. It seems like the meerkats so far have been a no-show. The wind is still blowing out here, but there's a great little armored ground cricket. Oh, he's actually run off. I don't even know where he is now. Look at that. So the hare and the tortoise gone. But potentially a new plant for swallow. That's very, very exciting. And I will try to do some homework and see if we can figure out what that is over the coming weeks. But in the meantime, while I'm looking at plants and ground crickets, and Jeandre and I are kind of trying to keep warm here, head over to Taylor and see what she's got. So cool.
We do have a little daycare just in the tall grass. You might hear some voices every now and then. It's because we are at the eco training camp. We actually got stopped, but I don't know if we'll catch the tail end of them. But anyways, this little daycare is just slinking through the tents, nibbling on some vegetation. But this is why we had to stop. Look at the ants. Those are hissing ants, or African driver ants, or Matabele ants. They go by a whole bunch of different common names, but they are amazing. They've just been out on a raid, They almost exclusively feast on termites. But this is literally just the last of them. There's one or two more still catching up. But you could see that they did have something in their mandibles. There comes the last little ant. Come on, quickly catch up. But they form these great lines going across the road, and you cannot miss them. So I had to wait for them to finish. We've been sitting here for about 5 minutes waiting for the ants to cross the road, which is quite funny, isn't it? I'm just trying to see where our little daycare has gone. So in and around camp, quite exciting because you have an array of different creatures. We have a scrub hare that is very relaxed and lives under the various safari vehicles, and then there's a daycare that also has become quite tame, habituated to people and all the sounds. But we're going to make our way towards Ndlovu and see if there's anything there, or if we go back to the Sabi Sands.
Yay, these aliens walked down to Treehouse Dam just as we would have loved for them to do, and then they went for a long time, and then when we scooted back round, here they were. Just took a little bit of patience to wait for them. This is just awesome. My favorite thing, or one of, but definitely high up there, is to see elephants. There's a loud plane. That's what you can hear. But the elephants are not perturbed at all. Just awesome. This one has a very strange technique to drink. It's been doing that the whole time it's been here. It lifts up water in its trunk and then rests its trunk on the tusk and feeds itself the water. Maybe its trunk's a little sore. It's just resting that heavy weight on its tusk. And elephants tend to do that quite a bit. Use it as a trunk rest. Now we're talking a little bit about mortality rates in animals, and I'd like to continue that conversation with elephants because you don't often think of mortality rates when you think of elephants. But young calves under a year have a mortality rate of about 30%, and that's when they're most vulnerable. But elephants are what we call case-selected species. So in biology, we have two types of selected species. We have case-selected and R-selected. And case-selected species tend to be larger, longer-lived, and invest in parental care and have few offspring. And it generally leads to a higher survival rate. And elephants tick all those boxes. Few offspring, parental investment, large species. So they are case-selected. And the R-selected species are those species that experience very high mortality rates, tend to be small and have many offspring at a time. And generally speaking, species can fit into one of those groups. There's some guys running behind us towards the water doing their I smell water jig. Lottie, you'd like to know if the front legs of the elephant are longer than the back legs of the elephant. They certainly do look that way. In terms of actual length, I don't know the actual length difference, but it certainly is that way visually. You can see that their shoulder is quite high. And that generally is the case because listen to them. Did you hear there's a low rumble they were emanating? Because of a large head, animals tend to have really strong forequarters. And elephants definitely do have a large head, but their head and the skull actually is a bit honeycomb-like, so that reduces the weight, because otherwise it would just be too massive. You'd just be hanging their head down all the time. That wouldn't be useful. Right, enough about mortality. Let's sit, relax, and watch this drink. That is amazing. Okay, you'd like to know if elephants' toenails are just constantly growing but worn away of them walking? Yes, that is the nature of nails. Nails constantly grow and are being worn away. And that is the case with claws, that is the case with nails, that is the nature, the virtue of nails. The same would go for us if we were busy climbing trees and breaking fruit and digging and all of that. Our nails would be worn away all the time. It's just because our lifestyle is no longer that abrasive that that doesn't happen anymore. So you've got to use a nail clipper. But the nature of nails is to continuously grow. One of my favorite things in the world to watch. I get so excited when I see elephants coming down to drink. So excited. And what's even more exciting is I get to share this experience with you and allow you to have this appreciation and love for them too. And please do go over to our support page and help us continue to bring these wonderful animals to you. And do it live and still continue to take your questions. I think it's just awesome that we can do this. The wind has really picked up now. Individuals, give or take, in this herd. Everybody's having a good drink. You'll often find that when it's very, very hot, though it seems natural for animals just to want to get to the water and drink, they wait till the sun is a little bit low. Heidi, you'd like to know if I think that elephants' ears and trunks continue growing like humans' ears and noses. I, for one, know that bulls will continue to grow. They don't stop growing. And that would lead on to that they must continue to grow their trunk and ears if they are continuously growing. Tusks continuously grow. But with females, once they have reached their growth or their maximum growth, I'm not sure if their trunks and ears would continue growing. Even with humans, I'm not sure to what extent that is true. I don't know if it is, if you have a change in your body mass, then it continues to grow, because then what happens if you get really shriveled up and old and then your nose is still growing? That may seem odd. but perhaps your cells are, or particular cells are constantly being replenished in those areas. I don't know, that's a cool question, Heidi. I'm gonna actually go and look that up. I've always heard that noses and ears keep growing, but I need to know the facts behind it. To what extent, how, particular cells, all those things. By knowing that kind of information, you can make inferences about whether other animals go through the same thing based on their structure, etc., etc. So that's why it's, for me, important to know all the finer scientific little knowledge bites, because then I can make inferences, you know. That's why I love science very much. I'm so glad that we could end off the show with these elephants having a drink. Also a bit of play in the mud at the edges. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Well, we are now freezing as the wind has picked up, so we're going to head very quickly back to camp, get some warm breakfast, because it is that time of day. So we'll see you this afternoon, everyone, for Sunset Safari, and thank you all for all your questions and your comments. Have a good night or day further.